Welcome, wherever you are, to ALFsplaining, the episode-by-episode British-based look at the American sitcom ALF, with me, Ben Baker.
And me, John Matthews.
And John, there's no episode look back today, as we've actually got a very special episode coming up.
A special episode?
Yes, and I don't mean in that 1980s sitcom style where, like, young Jimmy learns not to drink bleach or something like that. I mean...
Right,
like
fine.
We've got a guest.
A guest, you say?
In fact, if you look just over there, you might see him.
I can see him.
I'll tell you about him first.
Quickly.
Our guest today is perhaps one of the most consistent voices in not only my DVD collection, but life in general. His work on The Simpsons is perhaps only comparable to his longtime writing partner Al Jean, but throw in the brilliantly over-the-top action comedy Sledge Hammer and the magnificently silly It's Garry Shandling Show, and you're already groaning with brilliance. But that's not all, as he was also the co-creator of The Critic, the unfairly short-lived family sitcom Teen Angel, and one of the first internet-based cartoons I can remember seeing that wasn't just some stick figures shouting swear words at each other, Queer Duck. Away from TV, he's worked on tons of animated films as a joke guy, as well as doing a series of books for children, and has recently moved into travel writing, with his last collection, What Am I Doing Here? A Simpsons writer visits the world's hellholes, so you don't have to, coming out in 2023. Oh, and he worked on some show called ALF too. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me sickening pleasure to introduce our very special guest on ALFsplaining, Mike Reiss.
Hey!
Wow, what a pleasure, what a thrill.
Sadly, I think we're out of time now. That was it, I'm afraid. Mike, obviously you're a very in-demand chap, but do people ever really ask you much about ALF?
They really don't. Not only that, I do a lot of public speaking, and I have this where I take people through my career and I say, I worked on this show and here's Johnny Carson and this. And I also worked for a comic genius, and I put up a picture of Alf and people don't seem to recognize it. I'm expecting a big laugh or an and they don't know what it is. So
we sort of found that almost. We thought Alf was bigger than Alf was huge. I mean, 25 million, 30 million viewers. So we thought when we started a podcast about it, it would be a globally known phenomenon. But it's sort of not. It's a real niche cult thing it's become. And largely known through sort of the references in The Simpsons and things like that.
It was such a strange thing in that we were working on the show. We were a top 10 show. And I remember thinking, this, before I ever got to The Simpsons, I go, this is going to last. I didn't think the show necessarily would run a long time, but I thought it'll be syndicated forever, like Gilligan's Island and Mr. Ed, the Talking Horse Show. It was just one of those shows I go, my children and grandchildren will see this. And then it didn't even syndicate well. I mean, right off the bat, it didn't do well in syndication, and I didn't have children or grandchildren, so none of it worked out.
So, can you tell us just roughly how you got involved with the whole thing? Because I know you came from writing for Johnny Carson.
Right. I worked on the talk show. I don't know if I worked on Sledge Hammer before or after that. I can't keep it straight.
As far as IMDb is concerned, and as we all know, that is gospel, you went from Johnny Carson to Sledge Hammer, which is a thing me and John absolutely love as well. Obviously very cult in America. Over here, for some reason, ITV in the UK decided the best time to put it out would be 3 a.m. So it'd be one of the things you tape.
Sledge Hammer was the first American show ever to show in Ukraine.
No way.
Yeah, so, their suffering goes way back. But I can't even remember. I think I'd been fired from Sledge Hammer. Whatever it was, I know Al Jean and I were between jobs, and a friend of ours called. She said, I just got fired from my TV job, and we're having this sad lunch. And I said, why do we even want to work in a business that puts crap like Alf on the air? Alf and...
No way.
That concludes the interview, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. We have to...
No. You got to wait for this. So I said, why don't we work in a business that has crap like Alf on the air? I'd never seen the show, by the way. It was a snobby point of view. But I go, why junk like this is on TV? Then I go home from the lunch And there's a message on my answering machine that said, the producers of ALF want to meet with you. I went, oh boy. And we took this meeting at ALF, and they hired us, and me and Al Jean, they hired us on the spot. And so, and I still had never even seen the show. So it wound up being, I was surprised how good the show was. And it wound up being maybe the happiest year of my TV career. I just loved working at it.
It's like a sign from the universe, then, isn't it? If you whatever you say, the universe gives it back to you.
Yeah, I know. It was really fun. Let me tell you the story real quick, which is especially since you're starting season 2 on the podcast, which is apparently I wasn't there. Season 1 was such a nightmare. The hours were so long. I think there was a lot of friction at the offices that all the writers quit after the first season. And
that explains a lot.
yeah. I mean, they all quit. I mean, I've never heard of a show, no matter how miserable, where everybody quits. And all they had left was Bob Benditson. And Bob had worked on the first season with his brother. So they even broke up these two brothers. And so it was just Bob. And they put him in charge of the show. He'd never run anything. And then he was just desperate to find new writers. And so he had a couple of writers who I think had never worked in TV before. He hired his friend Lisa Bannock, who he knew. And then he brought in me and Al because he said, Bruce Ferber says you're funny. And we go, who's Bruce Ferber? That was, and it was just, Bruce Ferber had a friend we worked with, and the friend had told Bruce. So Bruce didn't know us either. So we got hired on the recommendation of a friend of a friend. And Al and I would say to him, Bob, maybe you should read something first. And we sent him a script, and I don't think he liked it, but he was just so desperate that we got hired there. And then it turned out to be just great, just the funnest job I ever had.
This is what we've read a lot about, these really incredibly long and arduous working days on ALF, because it was such a technical show to do. But in your book, you say that you finished at 7:30 every day and were home by 7:45, and it was the best writing job you ever had.
Yes, it was true. And it was a funny thing about it, which was because the terrible hours had driven away all the writers, Tom Patchett, the co-creator of the show, instituted a rule. He says, everyone's got to be out of here by 7 o'clock. Now, most TV shows you worked routinely till 2 a.m. And he wanted us out by 7. And Tom Patchett, if you know anything from your research, is a really scary man. He's tall, he's brooding, he's very muscular. He played Death once on the Bob Newhart show. So he was not kidding around. It was a threat. He didn't want you working past 7. And there were occasional nights where we had to go another half hour, and we knew we had to hide it from Tom Patchett. So all the lights in the offices, they'd be pitch black, and we'd be in the back room writing the last jokes like we were Anne Frank or something.
Secret writing. That's impressive. Yeah, it's not often you want to go, just do half an hour more work, but don't tell the boss. It's an unusual one. But we're going through season 2, as we have begun to now, we have genuinely noticed an uptick in gags, like properly good jokes and stuff. And it's not that series 1 doesn't have them, but as you've said, it's like we've often felt like there was sometimes when this went, just throw that on. We've run out of time, these long days and what have you. And sometimes you just think they just went with it. And series 2 definitely feels more consistent.
Bob Benditson, who ran the show, he was just an exceptional showrunner. He made it really fun. Our office, I think, like Rubik's Cube had just come out, and our office was full of puzzles and Rubik's Cubes and all the knockoffs of Rubik's. It was just a fun place to work. And we did something, I'm just remembering all this stuff. We did something I've never done on another show, which is we farmed out half the scripts. Usually on a TV show, they're all written in-house, and you maybe give out one to a freelance writer. But we had a couple of just great freelance guys who would just crank out scripts for us, which just left us free to gag them up, to just write them endlessly.
And I suppose that's obviously been good for what you've gone on to do, being a kind of, not necessarily a punch-up guy, but you are definitely someone, a reliable hand when it comes to chucking some gags in.
Yeah, it is what I do. I think it's what I do best. And so I've done it on 25 animated movies. I'm just the guy to make them funnier. I'm not doing it for your podcast, but I do it for movies. It was Bob, as I say, Bob had hired these two new writers. And when we came in for the meeting, he said, our initial meeting, he said, I need somebody. He said, these guys are so quiet. They just sit there. And so Al and I came in, kind of guns blazing. We pitched a lot. We got a lot of jokes in. And as a result, we didn't get to write any episodes. We only wrote 2 or 3 episodes because he liked having us in the writer's room. I just wrote to Paul Fusco an hour ago. We've stayed friends. He's really good on email.
Tell him about us. Tell him here. You've got 2 new great British mates.
I'll get my plug in right now, and then you'll plug it again. But I have a new Substack. I have a new weekly travel newsletter. And I just emailed him personally, said, Paul, you'll like this. And by the way, I have to cut this short because I'm going on an ALF podcast.
I've always liked you, Mike Reiss. I've always said you're a good guy. Don't listen to those other people. I think you're good. No, but obviously in your book, Springfield Confidential, you call Paul Fusco one of the most talented men you'd ever worked with. And that did my soul good to hear, because again, I think there are a lot of things from our childhoods people haven't worked out so great in later years.
Yeah. I wonder if he regrets it. He was so protective of his identity. He would never let anyone know he was the guy operating ALF. And by the way, there was no acting involved. That ALF's voice is Paul Fusco's speaking voice. And it's really his attitude. He's an Italian wise ass, very sardonic, very sharp tongue guy, but, with a big heart, like a big lovable Italian guy. And, that was just him. And he hit it so well that, I don't think he ever to this day ever kind of got the fame and the glory from it all. He got the hundreds of millions of dollars. Right? It might be fun for him to get recognized somewhere on the street.
It does seem he's been very underrated, under-recognized. He's not like a Jim Henson level celebrity, despite the fact his puppetry is without peer. The puppetry on ALF is stunning sometimes.
Yes, we really, you really forgot it was a puppet.
Yes.
Easy to write for. He had so many funny moves and that kind of thing. I'm sure, it took 3 people to operate him. He had a woman, I think it was a woman named Lisa Buckley, was just ALF's left hand or right hand. That was her whole job. And she had to stand behind Paul Fusco and just do one hand. And then a guy named Bob Fapiano with like a remote. It was just like a remote control car remote. And that's how he operated ALF's ears and his eyes.
Oh, okay. Because again, it's in series 1 when they're still using the short guy in the suit, and it's so spectacularly noticeable.
Yeah.
That's only when it breaks the illusion, really, I think. Because we have a friend who we've had on the podcast who works for Children's BBC as a puppeteer, and he absolutely rates Paul Fusco one of the best, up there with Henson and everything. He really does.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
He really does think he's an incredible talent.
That was it. I mean, good actor, a great puppeteer. He was a very talented writer. He was a very good director. He was a magician. David Copperfield, the magician, who's my one celebrity friend, said that guy, he was a good magician too. So really amazing character.
It's a crime that Paul Fusco isn't a household name these days, really.
And ALF.
Well, and ALF.
I don't know why. It pops up. Everybody remembers him, and they'll put him in commercials and that kind of thing. But
Yeah, what was that? Impractical Jokers he was on
It
last
was,
year.
yeah.
That seemed quite a big deal.
yeah, Bob Benenson, who I've mentioned a couple of times already, was really had a million ideas to reboot Alf, and when it was especially like 2 years ago when everything was being rebooted, we said we gotta do Alf, and I thought he had some great ideas, and just nothing stuck.
Do you think it'll ever happen, an Alf movie? Because they've been, every so often, a new poster will come out saying, coming soon, Alf the movie, but it's never happened.
It's never a script was written, whatever, in second season of the show, and it was written by a first season writer named Donald Todd. And I read it, and it was like a sci-fi spectacular. It was all set on Melmac with spaceships and lasers firing. It was a weird take on the whole thing.
A big movie, but not necessarily a Alf movie.
It didn't feel Alfie to me. You want to see him in the home. I'll tell you the ideas we had, or Bob's idea. Well, I'll tell you one, which I just loved. I said, Bob, when he pitched this, I go, I want to work on that. I'm kind of a retired writer, but I love this idea. He said, let's put Alf in a nursing home for retired TV stars. Isn't that great? And you put him in there, he's Alf, but he's the 80s TV star Alf in this nursing home with whoever's left alive for MASH and that kind of thing. And he's, just fill the cast with all these TV veterans and have Alf, fighting authority in the nursing home. And I told the idea to David Copperfield, the worst idea I've ever heard.
Well, what does he know with his supermodel wife and millions of dollars?
And his solid gold house.
So we have a feature on every ALFsplaining called the most impenetrable pop culture reference of the week.
Okay.
For stuff that either dated awkwardly or didn't quite make like the UK shows and what have you. And I just want to say, research them has generally become my favourite part of the podcast because it's always smartly used. It's never dumbed down. It's rare, and I think you wrote in your book basically that people on TV don't talk about TV.
Right. It was that famous joke in the pilot where Willie says, have we learned nothing from the Cosby Show? And it was, you never heard that on TV, someone talking about another TV show. And that's even, people don't know, that's sort of the rationale behind the opening joke of The Simpsons, the couch joke, is they're running in to watch TV because Matt Groening said people on TV never watch TV.
And there is a through line I can see from Alf to The Simpsons, with sort of the pop culture references, but also an adult level and a child level, I suppose.
It was all there. It was the idea, we never, like The Simpsons, we never gave a minute's thought to writing for the kids in the audience because we go, they're going to watch this anyhow. So all those good lessons we learned from Alf, we took right to The Simpsons.
There's something I find like watching stuff like Mystery Science Theater as well. They don't care that you don't get all the jokes. Some people get some of the jokes, some people get some of the other jokes. And it doesn't matter to the writers that not everybody's getting all the jokes. And I think it's brilliant. That's the sort of comedy I like.
Yeah, I mean, it helped that we didn't have a studio audience because I'm sure we'd have to play to them. But and they would come in. The network never understood it and go, "You should do it in front of an audience." And we'd say, "It takes 3 days to shoot one episode."
Yeah. I mean, one of the episodes in season 2 that we've absolutely adored is Primetime. I have never known an episode of a sitcom pull the veneer back so much to go, this is what television is. I mean, you've even got someone in playing Brandon Tartikoff, obviously. It's
that's right. Oh, I remember that. That was a fun week.
And Alf is fiddling the rating system and what have you, so his Polka Jamboree show gets to number one. And it's just such a... It's like, here's how the cake is made, and also we're going to stand on the cake and throw the cake in your face. It is...
Oh, I'm so happy. Yeah, I have to say, I love the show. I have not seen it since I worked on it 38 years ago.
It's quite good. You should try. It's good. It's good.
It's a total jamboree. In fact, if you watch, they show a close-up of the show, and it's Al Jean in Lederhosen. They used
I never noticed that.
No way.
him and another woman, I can't remember her name, who worked in the office.
Mm.
We would throw in people who worked at the office all the time in the show.
It's an extraordinary piece of television. And that comes out, a couple of episodes after the Gilligan's Island one as well, which again is like the idea of going, let's just do this. Let's just get everyone in who's still alive.
Yes. Oh my God, it was so much fun. And it was funny because Tom Patchett, again, the executive producer, he signed off on that. He'd never seen Gilligan's Island. And so he didn't know what we were talking about. But we had a scene of the skipper hitting Gilligan with his hat, which he thought was the funniest thing he ever saw. Tom did not laugh a lot. But he thought it was so funny. He put it in the show like 4 times. And over the closing credits, the theme song ends, and you hear the sound of the skipper hitting Gilligan.
He didn't realize it was a reference specifically directed from that. I mean, but again, that proves that you don't need to know the reference to find the reference funny.
Yeah, super fun week. Those guys were all so game, so nice to be doing this. And I think it sort of kicked off a lot of this Gilligan nostalgia. I don't think it had been going on. The show was forever syndicated, but when you would see them pop up in like Super Bowl ads and things like that, I think we kicked that off. We did that with them.
And obviously there's that kind of era of, like Nick at Night and stuff like that we didn't have over here, but I'm fascinated by all that stuff. And, sort of a spin on, here's some old stuff, but we're sort of like looking at it through a modern perspective, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, it all goes to the idea. It's funny, it was like Gilligan's Island in that the show was so, I don't know, in a box. I mean, it's the kind of idea they used to do a ton of that nobody does anymore, that like we have to hide Alf. We have this magical thing and we can't tell anybody, just like Bewitched and I Dream a Genie and My Favorite Martian and I guess Teen Angel too. It's just dumb and nobody does it anymore, but it really kept the show so cloistered. He could never leave the house. He couldn't meet people. Every script had to be kind of a farce of him hiding. And it was a little limiting, and that's where I knew, this show is not going to run 30 years because you can't do that much. And we had to do a lot of dream episodes, just like I think third season of Gilligan's Island. Half the episodes are just dream episodes.
So did you leave after season 2? Because I know you do have credits in season 3.
Yes, we left after season 2. I'll just tell you what happened real quick, which was sitcoms are like the military. You work a year, you get promoted to another title. So you come in as a story editor, an executive story editor, and then you would move up to co-producer, producer, executive producer, right? So Al and I, we already had credits. We were executive story editors. And so when we were talking about coming back the next year, we said, okay, and we'd like to be co-producers. And it's not even just the title. If you're a co-producer at the time, that meant you could go out and create your own TV shows. So we needed that title, and they wouldn't give it to us. And I mean, they loved us at the show, but they would not give us this co-producer credit. And so we left. We went to It's Garry Shandling Show, which is owned by the same company. And in fact, it was half the same staff working at the two shows. But to this day, I don't know why they cared that we get a co-producer credit. Now on The Simpsons, we have 47 producers.
You mentioned there, It's Garry Shandling Show, one of my absolute favourite programmes of all time, ever. And again, I think I can see Alf, Garry Shandling, Simpsons, a similar kind of this. We're doing things a little bit differently, but this is This is not the norm.
It's all self-aware. It's all one level removed. It's all smart and stupid. They're all very visual shows too. I mean, we got Sledge Hammer got to write visual humor. I mean, this was the era of the Cosby Show where it was just people sit on a couch and talk for a half hour, and then bugging happens. But I'm so happy after my first sitcom. I never had to work on a show like that. I never had to work on a normal sitcom, and I really am very grateful that that was my whole career.
Al Jean, I saw an interview with Al Jean recently, and he said it was the highest rated thing, Alf, that he'd ever written.
Yes, yeah. While we were there, it went into the top 10, which we'd never worked on anything like a Sledgehammer was very, very low rated.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I look at the ratings for every episode, and it's like watching Alf go up, and the bottom is like Garry Shandling and Tracy Ullman and Sledgehammer, and it's like all the things I really love are at the bottom, and then there's Alf.
Garry Shandling show was the next to the lowest rated show on TV. It was number 99, 100, and the only thing lower was the Tracy Ullman show.
And that didn't work out for anybody, clearly. We love the whole world of Alf. So obviously, you know, there's the cartoons, there's the comics, there's the toys, there's all that sort of stuff. Do you have any knowledge of sort of, because we sort of dig into the ephemera. We like the Alf ephemera. Like, for example, do you know there's a German guy, like the German guy who voiced Alf, brought out pop records?
Oh, yes. You know, I think I was in Germany. I go by an antique shop, and there's one of those Alf albums on the wall of an antique shop. And I took a picture and I sent it to Paul Fusco. And I said, do you even know about these?
That is something we are very curious about.
And he sent me a photo from his home with 8 gold records. Alf made 8 albums, I guess, in Germany.
Well, this is the thing. We're fascinated by these records because they're not what you'd expect from an Alf novelty record. Some of them are quite cool and hip and bizarre. And we wondered whether Alien Productions were aware of what was going on in Germany at this point.
Are they in German? It's a German guy, or is it?
Yeah, Tommy Piper.
Because obviously huge in Germany, Alf. That's the one thing we have found through doing this. It's like here in the UK, Alf was on what we call terrestrial TV, you know, with the main channels, obviously on ITV. But we had this weird thing at the time where basically different areas of the country would show things whenever they wanted. And so Alf was on, but it was on at different times and different days in different parts of the country. Like if you travelled through the UK, you might be able to say Alf 4 times in a week, you know, just by wherever you went. And then after Series 2, it went just to satellite television. And so unless you had that, you didn't see Series 3 or 4. In Germany, obviously, they just kept showing it and showing it and showing it on, you know, whatever channels it was. And it's beloved there. I think way more than even the US, probably.
Yeah. You know, it was the Andrea Elson who played the teenage daughter on the show. Really adorable woman.
She's great.
And, you know, nobody knew her. Nobody recognized her because everybody just looked at Alf the whole show. You were just focused on him and Max Wright because he was such an odd character. And I think it was Andrea. Then she went to just take a trip to Australia and she was mobbed. Everybody knew her there and she became a guest of the government. I think, then, you know, I may be amping up the story, but I think she met the prime minister and that kind of thing.
That's amazing. No, that again, something else which sort of has come through our watching is how good the cast are.
We're huge fans of Trevor, the next door neighbour, John LaMotta.
Trevor Achmonic, yes. It's so funny. I haven't thought of these people in years. John LaMotta, and he was the cousin of Jake LaMotta from Raging Bull. And his wife used to date James Dean.
Liz Sheridan.
Liz Sheridan, lovely.
But we always bemoan the fact that Alf and Trevor should have been friends.
Yeah.
There should have been a meeting because they are the sort of same kind of person, you know. They're both a bit slobby, you know, they're both dreamers and they're both funny.
Yeah, you know, more than most of these shows like Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie, this idea of the alien task force, I thought was real BS. It was a real half-baked idea to keep him secret. I go, what would have been the harm, you know? Why couldn't he have made friends? And that's pretty much it may be a third of the episodes is okay, here's someone else he can meet. Here's someone he can meet Kate's mother, and now he'll meet a blind girl. We just kept figuring out ways for him to meet people.
Yeah, and obviously there's an extra Ockmonic brought in, Jake.
Oh, right. We had to create that. That we got stuck with that. And one of the people who came in to audition for the role of was it Jake? That was his name?
Yeah,
Jake
yeah.
was Seth Green.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
just a little kid, but I recognized him because he played a young Woody Allen in Radio Days.
Yes, he does, doesn't he?
Really,
Yeah.
it was really pulling for him, but he did not get the job.
Okay, because maybe he would be too similar to Benji Gregory.
Yes. Oh, that made it. Yeah.
We do wonder if Jake was brought in as someone a bit more proactive, almost for Alf to bat against, you know, sort of because, you know, Brian's such a nice character.
Right. Yeah, you know, I feel bad. I was thinking of this that, you know, Alf was so great. You just wanted to write for Alf, and Willie was great because of the casting of Max Wright. And we never serviced the other characters very well. We never built them into anything or gave them much nuance, except the Achmonics. But, you know, the other three in the family just never got to emerge that much. And again, they were all really nice. I mean, Aunt Shadeen was very nice. She lived in a giant house in LA and was always throwing parties.
Okay.
It was funny. Years later, I read like an expose of Alf in People magazine where they said how miserable the cast was. I didn't know it. I had no idea. We were such a happy group, but they did not enjoy working together.
Yeah, this is another thing as well. I think there's always revisiting an old thing. It's the dark side of everyone was on drugs and miserable. Obviously, it probably doesn't help that Jerry Stahl obviously wrote Permanent Midnight, which is in some part based on his time writing for Alf.
All right, this is the Alf podcast. I'm gonna tell you about Jerry Stahl because I didn't even read the book. And I wasn't here for any of it. It was first season.
Yeah.
But I've seen the movie, and this is kind of interesting because Ann Mira played Kate's mother on Alf, and we had a Christmas party at the show, and she brought her kid, Ben Stiller, he was just this affable young guy trying to break into the business, and then 10 years later, he's playing Jerry Stahl in the movie, which is bad, but
it's very bad.
But Jerry Stahl acts like, I saved the show, and this show was so bad I had to take heroin. And the fact is, he came in as a freelance writer. He did go to the bathroom for a long time. Nobody saw him apparently shooting up, but he wrote a horrible script. He was not good enough to write a first season Alf episode, and apparently the staff had to completely rewrite it, so it came out good. So second season, Tom Patchett goes, well, Jerry Stahl did a good episode. Let's bring him. And he came back and he did another bad script, and we had to save that one too. So Jerry Stahl, I get so tired of hearing about the guy. He just wrote 2 bad freelance scripts.
Yeah, I mean, he wrote so far the worst episode we've seen by far, which is the one where Alf develops a crush on Lynn, and and he makes the rock video.
It's wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're working the show out at the start, and when you've come in, I suppose you had the advantage of it. They kind of found the voices of all these characters.
Yeah.
So did you actually go back and watch some of it before you started? I mean, I know you said you hadn't seen it before, but
I think we watched a few, and I think Al and I came in and just read all the scripts of the first season, but maybe not. Maybe we did, it wasn't Oppenheimer. It was a pretty simple premise to get. So That
Yeah.
was it. And again, we just kind of hit the ground running. I mean, the show they hired us. It was in production and everything. And we just came in and did our job. But I just loved it.
It doesn't strike me as something which, obviously, I think if the toys hadn't have sold as well, I don't know whether, because looking at the ratings and stuff like that, it's like, it did okay.
Mhm.
But, I mean, season 2 is where it really kicks into a different stratosphere. And did you come in with a mindset of, right, we're going to do our thing now, we're going to strap a rocket to this and make it at least something we enjoy?
No, I mean, it's Al Jean and I, we can really only do one thing and we do it over and over. And again, we're just lucky we get to get hired at the places that do them, to do a lot of pop culture. You know, if you watch The Critic, that's what Al and I can do. It's a lot of too many jokes and a lot of pop culture references and smart jokes mixed with stupid jokes and keep it fast, keep it moving fast. And that's what we did on the show. But everybody was pretty like-minded on that too. Steve Papoon, who wrote a ton of episodes, he really had a good sensibility. So when we went to It's Garry Shandling show, we hired Steve to write an episode there. And then he came over to The Simpsons and wrote an episode of that.
Yeah, we sort of, again, we're sort of tracking names out. We're sort of like, oh, they did that, and they did that, and that, oh, that's brilliant. Oh, and you realise suddenly that you're a big fan of somebody without even knowing what the name was.
Yeah, it was a good bunch. It's nice. I stayed friends with Max Wright till he died. I'm still in touch with Paul Fusco. And that usually doesn't happen on a TV show. And I'm in touch with almost all of the writers. The other weird thing, those season 2 writers scattered. We scattered where one moved, Steve Papoon moved back to Kansas, and Lisa Bannock moved to Massachusetts. I'm in New York. Everybody got the hell out of town after Alf. I don't know why.
That was it. There was the peaked. That was it. That was. I don't know. I don't know what you did next. Some cartoon or other. I believe you worked on after that. But Alf, really, that's a ceiling.
I really think, this is the peak. And I was, and then, when Al and I, when we're starting at The Simpsons, and it came on, it came on as a hit. It came on to the highest ratings in the history of the Fox network. Al and I were sure it was going to burn out in 4 years, just like Alf. We said, okay, let's enjoy it. Season 2 will be big, and then it'll fall off in 3 and 4, and that'll be it.
I mean, you wouldn't sit down and go, well, this one's going to be bigger than Gunsmoke. It's just, I mean, what is it now? Are we in season 312 or something like that? I mean, it's 36 years, isn't it? So
36 years. We just recorded our 800th episode.
Madness. It's remained that cultural touchstone for so many people, like that. And I think it's just the fact that it's still there. Yeah, can you imagine what season 36 of Alf would have been like?
Yeah.
But I love the idea of him in Old Folks Home. I really do.
Yeah, I thought it was a great idea. I shouldn't be giving away his ideas. His other idea. Yeah, I'm sure you know from your research, they did a TV movie where Alf was on an army base, and it was supposed to be like Sergeant Bilko. It was very weird because they shot it like Platoon. It looked really grim and dark.
Yeah, it does. It's weird.
Bob had the idea that, okay, Alf's been on an army base for 20 years, and then he comes back to the Tanner house to move back in. And now it's an African-American family living there, including like a tough as nails dad, a tough talking black guy who's not Willie, who's not going to put up with all of Al's nonsense.
Yeah.
That was a great idea, but ultimately they went with nothing at all.
Thank you so much for your time. We very much appreciated it.
I love this. I hope it wasn't too boring. You really brought back great memories. Amazing stuff came right back to me.
But we do have to ask you a question.
Okay.
We ask all of our guests. But you're the first who can actually answer from experience.
Yeah.
What does Alf smell like?
I bet he smells kind of bad. I mean, he's very hairy. Paul, who's very clean, good-looking, buff guy, even if however old he is, but he would sweat in the trenches. He was lit. It's a phrase. I'm in the trenches, but he would stand in the trench all day under hot lights with his arm up, and so he would sweat a lot. He was this big, sweaty Italian guy. I guess I got near enough to the puppet. It had no odor. There was a funny thing because the puppet was so expensive. I think it was $250,000 in 1985 money that you couldn't get the puppet wet. And we did this at least one episode. I think it's the Gilligan's Island episode where there's a lot of water and there's a pool and everybody fell in the pool except Alf.
Okay, because we sometimes notice in various scenes you get like the stunt Alf almost. It's like he looks a little bit off. Like presumably one that was used for rehearsals or whatever. Like
rehearsal. I wish I think there's footage of it somewhere you can see, but rehearsal Alf was this battered, beat up puppet they would just use in rehearsals. And even before Paul Fusco would come in, they would just hang it on a stick and they would shoot the scenes. And there was a woman with a kind of a squeaky voice who would read the lines. And so there'd be Billy acting to this rag doll on a stick. Alf, I just got the phone bill. And she'd go, "Yeah, Willie, I have a lot of friends to call." It was really the funniest show. It was just a surreal vision. But then they would once they had the lighting and blocking right, Paul Fusco would come in and operate, again, this beat up puppet from the first season. And he would just let loose. I mean, he would write that Alf was dirty and debauched, and he'd ad-lib a lot with him and do stuff he would never do with the expensive puppet. It was fun. It was fun to watch. We always had a monitor in the writer's office watching what was happening on stage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a better answer than most people give, which they just say smells like wet dog. That seems to be the most popular answer, but it's nice to get an expert in there, and who knows, hopefully we'll get some more people who worked on the show, and we'll have a graph, we'll basically produce a pamphlet, which we'll hand out to our homes around the area about Alf smells, and they'll obviously be delighted because they remember Alf.
Ask different celebrities how they think Alf smelled.
Oh, I mean, you could get a whole celebrity magazine out of that, couldn't you? A Tittle Tattle magazine. Alf stink, So you mentioned it earlier again, but just so everybody knows, you started a Substack on your travel writing.
Substack, yeah. I've been to 146 countries. Most people know I'm the guy who took the submarine down to the Titanic before it imploded.
Yeah, I'm glad it was before.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been as fun afterwards.
North Korea. So I write a weekly funny newsletter about all the weird and dangerous travel I've done. There's always a lot of pictures, and go to substack.com, and it's called Now I've Seen Everything. And you can Google it any number of ways, but Now I've Seen Everything, or just Google Mike Reiss Substack, you'll find it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We genuinely appreciate it, and we struggle very much with being, sincere. But we are actually genuinely in this case. So thank you very much.
I really had a ball. Good luck with the next 3 seasons of your show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All righty. Bye-bye.